Okay, I want to start today with a question that sounds simple, but if you really sit with it, like actually try to visualize it, it might break your brain a little. When you hear the word God, and I don't mean any specific version, just the concept, what's the image that renders in your mind? Is it a who?
A figure, right? Maybe an old man on a cloud looking down.
Exactly. A creator, a judge, or is it a...
And that's the fundamental fork in the road, isn't it? For most of the Western world, the default setting is definitely the who. It's the architect model.
Yeah.
You have the creator, and then you have the thing he created. The painter and the painting. They're separate.
Right. Completely distinct. The painter is not in the canvas. But today, we're doing something a little different. We've got this massive stack of research on Hinduism, philosophical texts, the Puranas, the Upanishads, and we want to try and find the operating system behind it all. Because, let's be honest, from the outside, it can look like a sensory overload. You know, colors, rituals, incense, and a lot of gods.
It can be visually overwhelming, for sure. You see the festivals, the deities with multiple arms, the fire ceremonies. And it's easy to get stuck on that surface level and just think it's, folklore. But our mission for this deep dive is to look past the UI, the user interface, and get to the actual code. We're going to examine Hinduism not just as a religion, but as this incredibly sophisticated, ancient metaphysical framework.
We're looking for the source code. And from what I'm seeing in these sources, the core concept, the absolute foundation holding it all up, is something called Brahman. And this seems to be where that whole who versus what thing really matters.
It's everything. I mean, if you miss Brahman, you miss the entire point of the worldview. And this is so crucial for everyone listening. Brahman is not a guy in the sky. Brahman is supreme consciousness. It's the very fabric of existence itself.
Okay, so let's unpack that so we're not just using buzzwords. In the architect model, God builds the house. In this model, God is the house.
In a way, yes. But God is also the space inside the house, and the ground it sits on, and the person walking through the door. The sources describe it as a shift from creator versus created, which is duality, to a reality where the observer and the observed are, ultimately the same thing. Non-duality.
That is a huge shift in perspective. It feels less like a religious dogma and more like, physics.
That's a very sharp observation.
Yeah.
To really get this, the texts say you need an empty mind. You have to strip away that us versus them bias. You stop looking for a boss and start listening for a frequency.
A frequency, okay, hold that thought, because that leads us straight into one of the most mind-bending parts of this research, the sheer scale of this consciousness. I think a lot of us assume ancient religions were pretty local, This is my river god, this is my mountain god. Right. But the Hindu texts, especially the Puranas, we're talking about something way, way bigger.
Oh, much bigger. They're discussing the Bramanda.
The multiverse.
Yeah, exactly. The multiverse. And this is where that primitive label just completely falls apart. For millennia, while other cultures were talking about a flat earth or a single heaven, Hindu cosmology was already dealing with innumerable universes floating like bubbles in a causal ocean.
Bubbles. That sounds weirdly similar to modern inflationary cosmology, and this is what's so fascinating to me. The sources point out that if supreme consciousness is truly infinite, it can't just be in one heaven, right? It has to be
everywhere. It's the only logical conclusion of the premise. If Brahman is infinite, it has to manifest in every atom, every person, every galaxy, every single parallel dimension. This is where the theology starts to sound a lot like quantum theory.
Right. The sources made that connection. They talk about reality as a field of energy.
Well, science tells us that what we perceive as solid matter is just energy fields vibrating, right? In this framework, you have Maya, often translated as illusion, but that's a bit lazy. It's more like relative reality.
Like a movie playing on a screen.
That's a perfect analogy. The movie is real while you're watching it. You cry at the sad parts. But the screen, the Brahman, is the underlying reality that makes the whole movie possible. The universe isn't a collection of things. It's a play of consciousness.
It's a theory of everything. That's what it feels like. It's not just be nice to your neighbor. It's here's the fundamental structure of the cosmos.
And that structure is why you should be nice to your neighbor. Because if that same consciousness is in you and in me and in the tree outside, then suddenly love thy neighbor isn't a command from a boss. It's just a logical conclusion. You are your neighbor.
Okay, but here's the snag. This is the thing that I think trips everyone up, myself included. If the philosophy is so elegant, one infinite energy, one Brahman, then why the 33 million gods? Why the elephant head, the blue skin, all the elaborate rituals? It feels like this massive contradiction.
It does seem like a contradiction if you're looking at it through that binary Western lens. But let's look at the access code theory the text mentions. This is where the genius of the system really shines.
The access code. Okay, break that down for me.
Well, think about it. Can you love a quantum field? Can you have a personal, emotional relationship with infinite, formless consciousness?
Probably not. It's too abstract. It's like trying to hug a math equation.
Exactly. The human mind isn't built for that. We operate on names and forms. We need attributes. So the deities, Ganesha, Shiva, Lakshmi, they're entry points. They're access codes to the divine.
So they're like user interfaces for the cosmic operating system.
That is a perfect way to put it. If the divine is in everything, then you can worship it through anything. But our minds need a focal point. So the Rishis, the ancient seers, they created these forms to represent different aspects of the one.
So when someone is bowing to a statue of Ganesha, they're not saying, this elephant-headed being is the one and only God who lives inside this specific statue.
No, not at all. They're using that form to focus their mind and connect to the formless Brahman. Ganesha represents wisdom, the remover of obstacles. If that's what you need to access the divine, you use that code. If you need strength, you might go through Durga.
This idea of user choice is pretty radical. The sources mention the term Ishtadevata.
Yes, the Ishtadevata, or cherished divinity. It acknowledges that people are different. You might be an intellectual, or you might be very emotional. Why should there be only one way to see God? The system offers a whole library of interfaces.
And there's a crucial distinction made in the sources here. The worship is for the benefit of the seeker, not for the ego of the creator.
That flips the whole script, doesn't it? In so many other systems, worship is about appeasing a deity. Please don't smite me. In this framework, the divine is complete. It doesn't need your validation. You need the practice to expand your own consciousness.
There's a phrase in the notes that just sums this all up. I'm going to butcher the Sanskrit, but it's something like, Ekam sat Vipra Bahudha Vadanti.
You were close. Ekam sat Vipra Bahudha Vadanti. The truth is one, but the wise call it by many names.
That's the bumper sticker for this whole idea right there. Diversity isn't confusion, it's just options.
It's a celebration of the infinite ways to connect.
Okay, so we've got the one energy in many forms idea down, but I want to play devil's advocate for a minute. Let's do some intellectual archaeology, as the source calls it, because we have to address the common critiques. And the big elephant in the room, pun intended, is the idol worship accusation.
Yes, worshipping stone and mud.
Right. The critique is, you are literally praying to a rock. That's primitive. How does this sophisticated metaphysical framework account for that?
This is where we have to separate what we see from what the practitioner is actually doing. The sources use a fantastic analogy for this, the smartphone analogy.
I loved this one. Lay it out.
Okay, so you're on a video call with your mother, who's on the other side of the world. You see her face, you hear her voice, you feel that emotional connection. You might even kiss the screen. Now, are you having a relationship with the phone?
No, of course not. I'm having a relationship with my mom. The phone is just the tool, the medium.
Exactly. Yeah. The phone is a tool that bridges the distance. The idol, is the smartphone. You aren't talking to the stone. You're using the stone as a device to connect to the divine, which is everywhere.
That makes so much sense. And the sources bring in these two terms to really clarify this. Nirguna and Saguna.
Right. Nirguna is without form, without attributes. That's the infinite Brahman. Saguna is with form. And since we can't really grasp the Nirguna, how do you visualize infinity, we use the Saguna form as a bridge, a mental bridge to the formless.
But it's not just any rock, is it? I mean, you can't just pick one up from the garden. There's a specific technology mentioned, prana pratishtha.
Correct. That's the installation process. Stick with our metaphor. Mm-hmm. Prana pratishtha is a ritual to infuse life energy into the statue. Before that, it's just a sculpture in a warehouse. After the consecration, it's treated as a living vessel for that divine connection.
It's a psychological and spiritual signal. It tells the mind, this is now a portal.
It shifts the user's intent. Precisely.
Okay, let's move to another critique. I think in the West, we often have this image of ancient Eastern traditions as being, tribal, just folks making up stories to explain thunder. We assume there was no real science.
Which is such a massive misconception. If you actually dig into the history, you find this huge body of work on logic, linguistics, mathematics, stuff that predates the European Enlightenment by centuries.
The source brings up this concept of deep time. This just blew my mind. While some Western cultures were arguing that the Earth was, 6,000 years old?
Hindu cosmology was measuring time in kalpas. One kalpa is 4.32 billion years. They were talking about the birth and death of entire universes on a time scale that aligns very comfortably with modern astrophysics.
That's wild. They weren't afraid of big numbers.
Not at all. And it wasn't just cosmology. Look at psychology. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali.
Oh, the stretching manual.
See, there's that branding problem again. We think yoga is just leggings and stretching. But the Yoga Sutras are a technical manual for the human mind. It breaks down the nature of thought, ego, consciousness.
Yeah.
It gives step-by-step algorithms for how to control the fluctuations of the mind.
Algorithms for the mind.
Yes. It predates modern psychology's understanding of the subconscious by something like 2,000 years. It's not about touching your toes. It's about what happens in your head when you try to.
And the sources mention the schools of logic, too. Nyaya and Vaisheshika. That sounded like pure science.
It is. Nyaya is the school of logic, how we know what we know. And Vaisheshika is the school of atomism.
Atomism, as in atoms.
Yep. Long before the Yugs, these thinkers were theorizing that the material world was made of tiny, indivisible particles called parmanu. They were applying the scientific method observation, inference, deduction.
So we've got a multiverse, quantum fields, deep time, atomic theory. It's starting to sound less like a tribal religion and more like a lost science.
It's a science of the inner world that mirrors the outer world. They just explored consciousness with the same rigor that we now explore space.
Okay, but here's where the user experience can get a little tricky for a beginner. If I want to be a Christian, I read the Bible. A Muslim, the Quran. If I want to follow this Hindu framework, what do I read? The critique is that there's no single, clear instruction manual.
And that's a feature, not a bug. The sources call Hinduism a religion of libraries, not a religion of the book.
A religion of libraries. I like that, but isn't that confusing?
It can be, but it reflects reality better, doesn't it? There's no single book that says, do this, don't do that. Instead, you have this vast collection of wisdom. And this gets to the critical difference between dogma and dharma.
Okay, define that difference. Dharma is a word that gets thrown around a lot.
Dogma is usually binary. Thou shalt not. It's a fixed rule for everyone, everywhere. Dharma is more nuanced. It means right action. And here's the kicker, that action is context-dependent.
Context-dependent ethics. Give me an example.
Well, the right thing to do depends on your role, your stage of life, the situation. The dharma of a student is to learn. The dharma of a soldier is to fight and protect. The dharma of a monk is nonviolence.
So if a monk picks up a weapon, he's violating his dharma. But if a soldier refuses to fight,
he is also violating his dharma. It's not one size fits all.
It assumes life is messy.
It assumes complexity. It asks you to think. It's harder, for sure.
It sounds harder. I kind of like being told what to do sometimes.
It is harder. And if you want a guide for that messiness, the sources point to the Bhagavad Gita. It's a whole dialogue about how to handle duty and grief when there are no easy answers. It doesn't give you rules. It gives you a framework for making decisions.
And because there's no single rule book, the notes mention this choose-your-own-adventure aspect.
Exactly. This goes back to personality types. You're not forced into one mode.
So what are the main paths?
Well, if you're an intellectual, you might follow the Jnana Yoga or Vedantin path, the philosophical study of scriptures.
And if you're more of a heart person?
Then you might choose the Bhakti path, devotion, song, love for a personal deity. It's the path of surrender. And then there's Karma Yoga, for people of action, selfless service. The idea is, why should there be only one way to climb the mountain?
It's a customized journey for the soul. That's really appealing.
It says start where you are. It doesn't demand you become someone else first.
So let's try to wrap this up. We started with God as a what, not a who. This infinite fabric of consciousness. We realized the millions of gods are just user interfaces for that one energy.
And we went from seeing primitive rituals to a framework that has room for deep time, atomic theory, and advanced psychology.
It really is a map versus the territory situation, isn't it?
That is the key takeaway. The rituals, the scriptures, they're all maps drawn by the seers to help us navigate. But the map is not the territory. You have to actually walk the land.
The ritual is the means, not the end.
The end is the internal realization of the Atman, the self. The realization that the spark within you is the same as the fire of the stars. The phrase is Tat Fam Asi, thou art that.
Which brings us right back to that operating system. It's an OS designed to run the program of who am I?
Precisely. And if you really let that sink in, even as a thought experiment, it changes everything.
How so?
Well, here's a final thought for you to mull over. If God isn't a person up in the sky, but the actual material of the universe itself, if Brahman is the fabric of reality, then look at the object that's in your hand right now. Look at the person sitting next to you on the bus.
You're saying I'm holding a piece of the divine.
You're not just holding it.
Yeah.
You're made of it.
Yeah.
And so is the person you disagree with politically. So is the person you love. If everything is just the avatar of the same consciousness playing a game of hide and seek with itself, how does that change the way you move through the world today?
That is a lot to think about. I think I'm going to be staring at my coffee cup and my coworkers very differently this morning.
Just don't forget to drink the coffee.
Thanks for this deep dive.
Always a pleasure.